You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half of the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Convenience industry insiders call them C-stores, but that C can stand for more than just convenience, as you've heard us say over and over again on this show. In today's episode, that C stands for community. Welcome to Convenience Matters. I'm Carolyn Schnare. This is the second episode in our Convenience Retailer Deep Dive series, and today we're talking with Lonnie McQuirter, owner of 36 Lyn Refuel Station in Minneapolis. 15 years ago, Lonnie bought his store, embracing the challenge of turning it into a place that provided not just gas, but healthy food and community connections. One of the main priorities for 36 Lyn is being a good neighbor. In the summer, the store is a pickup point for a local farm's produce for members of the farm's CSA. 36 Lyn is also a sponsor of the city's annual Open Streets event that closes busy streets to allow access for pedestrians, bikers, and strollers. The site hosts bands to play during the festival in a rather unique location on the property. But I'll let Lonnie let you in on that secret in just a minute. Overall, Lonnie wants his store to have a positive impact on his customers. But Lonnie, like many of us, has faced a challenging year. But unlike most of us, his store faced a confluence of crises in the summer of 2020. Located in the heart of Minneapolis, his store was right in the middle of the violent civil unrest and protests in July. His store was looted, but spared long-term damage. The community rallied behind Lonnie and the employees of 36 Lyn, and they stayed open to serve the community throughout the days that followed. Not long after this, we talked with Lonnie and we featured his story in NACS Ideas to Go. If you haven't watched it, I really encourage you to do so. It's emotional and honest. I'll give you the web address to find that video at the end of the show, and I'll also add it in the episode notes. Today, we're going to hear a snippet of that interview with Lonnie and our very own Jeff Leonard. The part I'm going to share with you is about Lonnie and his team's devotion to their community. He's going to tell us how he has grown a single store operator and some tools he has found to help him along the way. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff.
We talked to you in August when we put together this video. How's everything going now? Do you have any updates for us since we last talked?
Since August, we're still figuring things out. There's still a lot of uncertainty. And that's okay. With the kind of year we've had moving into 2020, with with everything thrown at us, this is something that we just need to just kind of accept the uncertainty. When you're in hell and when you've recognized that, keep going. It's kind of what I've had to resolve, for myself. And then also with the staff is really stress and communicate that is that, we are going through a difficult time, to be sure. I'm not trying to discount the effects of the pandemic or of the unemployment that's taken place or of the unrest and everything else that's going on here. You can look at it and have you kind of be paralyzed and have your team be paralyzed there. And we've seen that in some organizations and, in the news, and you've also seen great examples of people that have really put on their boots, got up and got to work and, are working on figuring out the world's problems right now. And when I say the world's problems, I'm a small operator. I've got one store in Minneapolis. So the world's problems for me is much smaller. It's just, the confines of my third of an acre here in a small corner in a small town, USA.
So communications, that's a big deal. And you kind of teed that up. How do you communicate to your staff, to customers, when there are times of uncertainty like there are now and for the last 6 months when you take into account COVID from March till now? And I imagine a lot of communications are more focused on being proactive, talking to the community. Obviously, the whole point of the video is how you were part of the community before all of the events that we experienced in 2020. And when you maybe needed some help, they were there for you. So in terms of proactive communications, are there things or tips that you've seen work, whether it's talking to customers or talking more broadly in your community?
In terms of communicating things with staff and with the community, what I really want to focus on in terms of our social media presence and where we think it most important is understanding that we're a small store, and what matters in our local neighborhood, our local community, matters much more than on the national and on the federal level during times like these. I can't control what goes on in DC, but I can control what's going on in my zip code and my area. And in terms of communicating to staff and customers what our hours are going to be like, what our safety plan for COVID is going to be like, what hours and what safety precautions we're taking during the unrest or during protests, or, what's our stance on certain matters here. I mean, that's really my role, and that's really an opportunity that we have as an organization to speak up. Those larger issues, it kind of have to leave it up to, NACS and other large organizations to kind of represent us in that way. But in terms of in terms of our local area, and in terms of the in terms of our community, in terms of our neighbors and whatnot, it rolls off the tongue all too easy saying that there's over 153,000 convenience stores in the United States. But they're all individually run. They all have their own regular customers. They all have their individual staffs that all can make a difference in their area and in their communities. What we've been able to do here, it's not something that can't be replicated by the chains. It's not something that everyone in small town or even in the big cities can't replicate. We know our customers, we focus on them. We know our staff, and we focus on them. So during times of crisis, whether it be the pandemic or be the social unrest, we really want to focus on who our customer is and how do we service them? How do we adapt to the changes there and the new needs that they have post-COVID, and also with our staff, What can we do to make them feel safer? I think is a question everyone wants answered. And what can we do to deliver value is also something that everyone wants answered right now. How can this help my business grow? And it's not just building the bottom line. It's like, how do we build stronger relationships? And how do we build stronger networks? Because those pay dividends, especially in times like these where we have the unrest going on, where members like myself and in small towns have the opportunity to reach out to the folks like you guys at NACS, and you guys respond to emails, and you're willing to really be there to help us, help us survive, one, the pandemic, to the unrest, and three, all the uncertainty that's been thrown our way with AI, with new labor situations, and with the new challenges with the different types of automation that's taking place in convenience. All the other challenges that one looks like doom and gloom in some ways, you can really see the light and see, you can really see the forest through the trees with all this, and you can really get to the top of the summit by just embracing, the NACS Crack the Code experience, the NACS events, and, really asking for help.
I don't think we've ever had a session or ever had a magazine article or ever had a NACS daily story or anything like that, podcast, talking about take advantage of the roof. And the roof is really kind of a unique theme that kind of weaves its way through the video, where the roof was a point to celebrate the community. It also became a point where how do I, manage safety at the lot when times were a little tense. So let's take us through, how did you first decide, well, let's use the roof for a band. Let's use the roof for community experiences. And you have to check in with anybody and get safety checks. What was your first experience with coming up with the idea about the roof?
I can't remember exactly what all went into the decision-making process about the roof. It was a conversation with the staff. But one of the things was walking through my store. It's pretty hard to find an appealing spot to, one, set up a stage, and to also attract artists to want to play a show without having to go all out setting up a stage and everything else, and also trying to figure out the logistics of that. So naturally, it's kind of kitschy, and one of the most novel ideas is like, why don't we just put them on a roof? We know the sound's going to project, and we know it's going to really, attract bands that may otherwise say no because, they don't want to play in a parking lot. They don't want to play inside a store, or the acoustics may not sound right. But, on a roof, you can kind of tweak it enough and have big enough speakers where it'll project enough where you can, one, attract an audience, and two, attract, folks that may not otherwise, choose to play.
And everybody can say they had their Beatles experience.
Exactly.
I grew up in Poughkeepsie, New York, and I remember 40 years ago, the DJs were on the roof for the Jerry Lewis Telethon, and they would go on the roof of a local 7-Eleven. And it struck me, just thinking about NACS now, that's back when NACS was a national sponsor of the MDA Telethon. We collected about a third of the money, but every time I go back there and drive past that store, first thing I say is that's where the DJs were on the roof. It's a memorable experience decades later. So when you look at just different ways to kind of turn something a little unique to people, it's very memorable. And I'll stop at that store just because I remember that store, not because I necessarily need something if it's on that way in. So those are the kind of ideas I think that get people really enthusiastic about the what ifs. And one store operators, smaller operators, really got to figure it out. I mean, there's NACS, there's the trade publications, there's all kinds of ways to find some of these answers, but there's also these networks that you're part of, that you just kind of create. I assume they're informal networks with smaller operators or more formal ones where you just kind of say, hey, you know what, I'm looking for some help, or anybody have any ideas, or can somebody just hear me vent? Talk about some of those experiences for the smaller operators and how they can just know that they're not alone.
Through NACS, I have been able to put together a network of trusted confidants, and I honestly have been fortunate to be a confidant in someone when they're calling and wondering how do they deal with the unrest going on in their small town, or what was my experience in terms of sales with COVID, or how does reopenings work, or what kind of practical practical things they can do to get more customers in, or managing their social media or other events. And some of that's been me referring them to some of the NACS executive leadership courses, and other ones have been, you need to call this person up on this coast or that person on that coast, or maybe you need to call Jeff, or look at some of the resources on the media kits on the convenience.org website. Thank you for providing that, because that helps us small retailers really kind of, we can have a larger PR presence, a larger marketing presence when we have a really small or nil budget. I mean, you can see my luxurious corner office here. I mean, we're really living up here on the corner of 36 and Lyndale. But, the wide array of resources that's available, it truly is an untapped resource that I think many small and mid-sized members really should be utilizing much more, because this is something where in years past I've paid consultants, I've hired specific folks to do that. Now it's really simplified what handling, whether it be the marketing, our communications, or PR efforts here at 36 Lyn Refuel Station.
As I mentioned at the top of the show, you can watch the full interview with Jeff and Lonnie, as well as see the video at convenience.org/Lyn36. And by the way, that's Lyn with just one N. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Lonnie, for telling us your story. Before I send you on your way, I wanted to ask a quick favor from you, my listener. I want to know what you want to think of the show and what you want us to talk about in future episodes. Go to convenience.matters.com and fill out a quick 30-second survey and let us know how we're doing. Also, let us know what you want to hear. But as a thank you, I personally will send you a one-of-a-kind Convenience Matters sticker that you can proudly display on your water bottle, your coffee cup, your laptop, your home desk, whatever. Leave me your address in the survey, and I'll drop it in the mail. Thanks a bunch, and thank you for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.